the complex simplicity of romantic melancholy depicted in music nested into the most classical form. All of this and more coming right up on Conducting Pills. Hi, I'm Gianmaria Griglio, I'm a conductor and a composer, and welcome to a new episode of Conducting Pills, a series where we take a repertoire piece or a part of it and we analyze it from a conductor's point of view. In this episode, we'll dive into the first movement of Brahms' Fourth Symphony, its haunting theme, its phrasing, and of course we'll have some technical tips. As usual, you can jump through different sections of the video by clicking on the links present in the description below. I want to take a second to thank all my patrons and to remind you that on my patrons page you can find all the bonus episodes of Conducting Pills, the live sessions, and many other patrons' perks. And now, let's begin. It took Brahms more than 20 years to write his first symphony. The second premiered 1 year after the first, the third came 6 years later, and his fourth and last symphony after another 2 years. All four symphonies are remarkably different from one another, and yet all of them are quintessentially Brahms. But the Fourth Symphony is the one that adheres the most to the classical forms combined with the aesthetic of Romanticism. Brahms goes even further back in time in the last movement of the symphony, using a pre-classical form, the passacaglia, as its base. The first movement itself is in sonata form, with some variations. There is no introduction, there is no repetition of the exposition, and there are 3 thematic groups. The first thematic idea of the exposition is characterized by a dreamy cantability. The violins play the theme in octaves, softly supported by the held sounds of the horns and the arpeggios of the violas and cellos. The woodwinds, minus the oboes, counterpoint with the same theme in thirds, 2/4 notes apart from the violins. There is one thing in particular you should pay attention to, the length of the notes. It's very easy to hear the half notes of the theme fade away, turning into quarter notes or dotted quarter notes. Register the line and keep in check the length of your stroke. The phrase covers 18 bars, after which it is repeated with variations. The theme itself is presented now in broken octaves, bouncing between first and second violins. The woodwinds part is now played by the cellos and basses, and the woodwinds themselves play a counterline of scales and arpeggios. On bar 29, the situation seems to change, but the musical material folds back on itself. The same idea is presented again, shortened but driven by a crescendo to a forte. You'll notice that throughout this entire movement, the way Brahms keeps playing with the same ideas, transforming and reworking them, is staggering. The rhythm of the first theme is shortened already on bar 13 and 37, and even more on bar 42. The rhythmic diminution increases the tension and anxiety of the musical phrase, pushing it forward to a resolution that Brahms keeps putting off. Just when we think that the tension is about to resolve, Brahms stretches it again, landing on the second thematic idea. It starts on the minor key of the dominant in the woodwinds and horns with this rhythmical figure we'll see so much of. Followed after 4 bars by a dramatic and intense line sung out by the cellos. And then by the violins. The rhythmic element returns, followed by a ping-pong game between strings and woodwinds playing off the first theme. Leading to a huge expressive crescendo. All of this lands on the major key of the dominant with a new theme, very serene at first. With some shades on the oboe entrance. Four bars before letter E, the tranquility of this passage is interrupted by ominous figures of the strings rising and falling over 3 bars on a timpani roll. Bring back your hands towards your body before this section and collect the sound. You can lightly register the line, but keep everything pianissimo with no crescendo. Make sure you pulse on the downbeat of letter E. This will ensure the short note and the clear attacca for the rhythmic element. By the way, I'm going into the technical analysis of this movement in my Patreon-sponsored episode you will find on Patreon. In the background, we hear the incipit of the rhythmic motive played by the trumpets. That same motive becomes more and more insistent, driving the orchestra to a fortissimo and to the conclusion of the exposition. A piano subito gives way to the coda of the exposition based on the head of the first theme. After 8 bars, the first theme reappears just like at the beginning, as if it was a normal repeat of the exposition, but in reality we are already in the development section of the movement, and the theme starts getting reworked after a few bars. Look at how the first musical idea pops up in the background in the woodwinds line. This very same variation forms the base for the first forte of the development. Landing on the rhythmical figure of the second thematic group, this time in pianissimo and legato. The ominous figures of the strings are back, interlacing with the rhythmic idea which eventually takes over. The tension increases, the triplets of quarter notes lead the way on something that seems about to explode. But instead turns its way back. The triplets are used in a lovely line in the clarinets and bassoons, while the flutes and strings counterpoint with the first theme. The atmosphere relaxes and time is stretched. We are approaching the end of the development. Once again, the head of the first theme makes its appearance in an elongated version in the woodwinds, answered by the now familiar figures of the strings. We are at the recapitulation. The first theme is once more variated, while the second and third theme are brought back in the home key. The coda, starting on bar 394, re-elaborates the first theme, shortening it and naturally increasing the tension. The movement ends on a powerful tutti chords with a dramatic timpani part on the second to last bar, on the subdominant chord. Sooner or later, this is a piece that every conductor encounters on his or her path. It's eutonic in structure, but so fragile in its lines, finding the balance between different aspects of this movement is one of the most challenging and satisfying aspects of this job. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button right below the video and ring the bell so you will get notified every time a new video comes out. You can also show your support on Patreon, and if you're interested in conducting technique, follow my Facebook group. All the links are in the description. Let me know in the comments what you think about this piece and if you have any suggestions for future videos. And I look forward to seeing you next week with another episode of Conducting Pills, when we will go through the first movement of Haydn Symphony No. 88. In the meanwhile, please continue to enjoy music and be well. Ciao. For a technical one, you should keep in mind the direction of this 18 bars long phrase and the fluidity and pulse on the rest in between. On bars 13 and 14, you can use half circles for the slurs.